Hey everybody, this is Minion Soldier, and well, it's definitely the piracy show this time around because there are ships and there are pirates, and it's pretty damn good. It really, really is. Now, you might be wondering, why are we talking about a new world? Why am I showing a new world? And the truth of it is that as much as we wish it weren't the case, Star Citizen is a long ways away. A fully fleshed out, playable Star Citizen is a long ways away, and we are going to need things to distract ourselves. We're going to need things to kind of keep us busy, things that entertain us. And this was on my list. There are two MMOs on my list that I really wanted to play this year. Ashes of Creation and A New World. These are absolutely at the top of my list. And A New World, of course, is something that, you know, if you've watched a bunch of my videos, you know that I love this period in history. You know, I love the idea of rapiers and muskets and pirate ships and all that stuff. And so to have a game set in that world was, you know, it was an absolute godsend. And I've been following A New World since it was announced, and I've been waiting and waiting and waiting for this moment. Of course, this is closed beta footage. Now, of course, if you happen to own A New World and you're creating a character and you're like, oh man, I'm missing out on the launch. You're not. Everything that you see here is going to be wiped. This is kind of an opportunity to kind of get familiar with the game, get familiar with the game systems. We're at this point in the beta, we're kind of past the point of just saying, oh, hey, by the way, this system just totally doesn't work. Remove it from the game. You know, we're like, this is, you know, when we talk about Star Citizen and things like that, we are very much at the foundational level where all the pieces are starting to be designed and shaped. Whereas in A New World, everything's been designed and shaped and more or less kind of built up. And it's more or less, here you go, you get to try it, you get to look for bugs. That's more or less what a beta is. And I got to admit, it's a pretty damn good game so far. Now, I've only just begun to dip my toes into it, but I really wanted to get into the action. I know that this character isn't going to last, so I just started kind of throwing pieces together and just going like, what does this look like? What is that? Never mind. And you'll see me just kind of go, you know, I know that I could really get stuck in to this character creation, but I immediately just went, nope. Get into the game, start playing. You know, this, whatever you make now, it doesn't count. I'm kind of torn as to what character I am going to make in the end. I have a pretty good idea. It's going to go one of two ways, but exactly which way, I'm not too sure. But you know what? For now, it works, and it's so much fun. It appears right now that you can only make one character, and you can't make multiple characters and that sort of thing. Though that is something that could change. That could just be a feature of the closed beta. I don't know yet, you know. If that is the case, that you can only make the one character, but then you can go back and you can respec into this, respec into that. Generally, that's something that I'm not too much of a fan of, just because, you know, your base level character appearance and what your character is, you might get bored of that, or you might want to change it, or you might see something else and go, oh man, I wish my character looked like this or that. And obviously this would probably end up being something that, well, you can if you buy a token, you know, that sort of thing. So I wouldn't be too shocked if this is something that appears in the in-game store at some point in the future. I'm pretty much assuming it will. But the core game, you know, by the time you get through all the character creation, the cinematics, all that, by the time you hit the beach, it is very much an MMO that you would expect from a console, you know, an Xbox or a PlayStation. It is not what I would really call a traditional PC MMO. And when I'm speaking of that, I'm talking about things like the Old Republic, World of Warcraft, stuff like that. This is very much more action oriented. It's, you know, it's not really an MMO RPG. It's kind of an MMO ARPG. The combat system, seemingly at the very beginning, is very simple. It's not unlike to a certain degree, it's not unlike an Assassin's Creed to a certain degree. I enjoy it. I feel that it kind of has certain, in the very beginning with the very basic skills, it certainly has a feel like Assassin's Creed Valhalla, and that's not a bad thing. You know, there's something to be said for the simplicity of console controls. And I think that to a certain degree, PC games or PC MMOs like SWTOR, like WoW, they can offer a lot of interesting options in terms of combat capabilities, but at the end of the day, they do start to feel rather samey. And, you know, you kind of get used to things being the same way time and time again. And so to have something like this, if you're coming from something like that, is, you know, it's a palate cleanser. It's fresh, it's different, it's new. And sometimes, like, kind of simplifying the controls but making the gameplay a little bit more high stakes and more action oriented can be a nice change of pace. And, you know, that in and of itself, I mean, there's something to be said for that level of complexity. You know, when the game is more challenging than getting the rotation right, you know. And so the challenge in this game really isn't so much getting the right stats, as far as I've seen so far, and getting, you know, the right gear and getting your rotation right to within, you know, a millisecond and whatnot, and, you know, managing, you know, 60 talents on top of, you know, timing all your abilities and buffs and debuffs and, you know, using proc effects and all of that. It doesn't seem to be, at least at the beginning, very, you know, it doesn't seem to be orientated towards that. There may be a little of that in the future as things get a little bit more complex, but it doesn't seem to be entirely dependent upon that. So it's a pretty damn cool thing. I would say that one of the best features about this, about the idea of how this game is built, is because it does feel like an Assassin's Creed. It does feel like a single player RPG console game, and a good one, you know, a good one at that. But one of the biggest drawbacks of those games, one of the things that constantly pulls me out of those games when I'm playing them, is that there really is no shared experience with other players. And I need that, you know, I need that feedback from other players, whether it's like, hey, look at your gear, or hey, check out your mount, or look at my achievements, look at my sword, you know, look at the way my character looks, all this cool stuff. There's something to be said for that community interaction. It makes it, you know, it makes it a much more special experience. And so this kind of marriage of that style of game with an MMO is, you know, I feel it's a good idea. It fills that gap that so many of these, you know, good single player RPGs, you know, it's their ultimate weakness is the fact that you can't share that experience with other players. And so this seems to kind of give you that avenue to do that. And at the end of the day, you know, we always talk about MMOs, massively multiplayer, and that's always the, you know, I'm a huge fan of these games, and whenever people say, hey, have you tried this, hey, have you tried that, even Cyberpunk, I would, I enjoy Cyberpunk to a degree, but ultimately what kills it for me and makes me stop playing it is the fact that there's no one else there. There's no one else to talk to in the game. There's no one else to do missions or quests with, and you're just sitting there playing with yourself, and it's kind of boring at the end of the day. Now, one of the biggest questions with an MMO, one of the most difficult things that an MMO has to kind of get over if it wants to, survive, is it has to project the sense that it's going to survive. It sounds kind of crazy, but or like a paradox, but for an MMO to survive, people have to think that it's going to survive. But how are they going to know it's going to survive if they don't know it's going to survive? That sort of thing. People don't want to invest time in a game that is ultimately going to vanish, that's going to close its doors and disappear. I don't believe that that's the case with this game. I think that this game is going to hang in there for probably at least a couple of years, even if it's a total disaster. I think that you're probably going to see at least 2 years worth of gameplay out of this. But there's no real indication up front of what I would look at and just say, ooh, that looks pretty bad, or that looks like it's going to go downhill. I've genuinely enjoyed the gameplay so far. The way the quests are delivered to you is very well done. It's cinematic. You're having a conversation with someone. It's not like when you're playing World of Warcraft and you click on somebody and you just get a wall of text. And you're like, I'm not reading all that, and you just close it. You're actually sitting there and they're talking to them, and they've recorded the lines, and so you're going, oh, okay, and you got a map that tells you here, go here, do that. But at the same time, it's not oppressive, right? When you're talking to these people, they're not sitting there and they're saying, well, you know what, let me read you a novel now as to my motivations and why I'm here. The developers seem to understand the fact that you don't need to do that right away. You don't have to front end load like the entire plot. Who is Layson Reese? Why? What is his reason for being? What are his motivations? How does he identify? What are his preferred pronouns or whatever? The game doesn't overload you with all that crap. It's just basically, it's saying, I'm going to drip feed you the pieces that you need when you need them. I'm just going to let you get used to the systems. And it just opens up every system a bit at a time, and just kind of drip feeds it to you at a pace that's not too slow, but at the same time, it's not so much at once that you go, oh, what's the option to do that again? Oh, I don't remember because they only showed it to me in a quick flash, 20 minutes ago. And I never needed it at the time, but now I need it and I can't remember what the keybind is. It's not like that. It's well done. It's a well-crafted introduction to the game, and it makes the game experience much more compelling to kind of stick with, And one of the more interesting things with a lot of these MMOs is that as I'm watching the footage now and I'm recording this after the fact, I'm seeing the experience bar at the bottom for the first time ever, like really noticing it. Whereas before, I wasn't worried about the experience bar. I wasn't thinking about the experience bar. I wasn't going like, oh, how long till my next level? How long to my next level? I was just playing the game and enjoying the experience, and the levels were just kind of, they were just happening on their own. And that's a pretty good thing. That's a very strong indicator for me when I'm playing a game and I'm not actually counting my experience points, but rather I'm just playing the game and just having a good time. That's good design, man. That's good pacing of combat and questing. Well done. Really well done. Now, of course, there is, there was the issue, or rather non-issue, of the cash shop. that goes along with this game. And there were certain items in there that were kind of like, well, you know, you're selling convenience items, but you kind of created the inconvenience in the game. If the game is fun and it's enjoyable and you're genuinely just, you're playing through it and you're having a good time, if someone wants to go and, you know, swipe their credit card and just skip ahead and miss out on the experience, then, you know, then that's too bad for them, really. And another thing that people seem to forget when you can kind of buy experience and buy levels and boost your characters is that one of the sadder and funnier things at the same time about boosted characters in most MMOs is you can tell who they are right away because they're at max level and they don't know how to play their character. Like, they have no clue. As you level up through a game and as you interact with the systems, the different abilities and all of that, you know, you learn at a good pace how to deal with all the different abilities, how to kind of, you know, make them flow together and make them work together to make your character stronger. Whereas a player who just boom hits level 60 or whatever, and all of a sudden they're hit with 30 abilities and a myriad of talents to choose from, and they really have no clue what they're going to do with those things. You know, you can, in buying that boost and going ahead, you can actually make things far more difficult for yourself than it originally was. And that's why when I see things like character boosts in a store, it's kind of yuck, but at the same time, it's, you know, you realize that it's a trap. Because when that character boosts, unless they're like very well versed in the game somehow already from having leveled up a different character, if that's, you know, a feature that we're going to have, or we can level up multiple characters, you know, then they're going to be at a loss, and they're going to have to face a really brutal learning curve where the game is very, very difficult. It demands you to have mastered all these different capabilities and talents, and you never did because you never did the leveling experience. And I hate to say it, but those players stick out like a sore thumb. They really, really do. So the cash shop thing doesn't really worry me, and I'm not so naive as to believe that game servers and game development is funded on warm and fuzzy feelings. You know, it's a difficult process, you know, and it's an expensive process, and the game has to be funded one way or another, right? Like, no, these things just don't operate for free. So somewhere along the line, someone's gonna pay. So someone's got to pay for these things, and the individual box sales of a game will, like, that money will only last so long. And especially when you factor in the back end expenses of having developed the entire game, you know, this idea that, oh, well, you know, X amount of people bought the box, so therefore the game should run for a decade realistically. And it's like, no, because they spent all that money over the last 3 to 4 years actually making the game. And, you know, fingers crossed that they were going to make a product that they could release and that people would actually buy just to recoup that cost, right? So cash shop, not really that big a deal for me. Yeah, I'm digging it. The only thing that I was kind of disappointed about, because, you know, later on in the very beginning of the playthrough, I found a musket, but I still haven't found a rapier yet, and that's kind of where I want to go, is musket and rapier. That's kind of one of the ideas that I'm thinking about. So that was kind of disappointing that I didn't find that, but, you know, I'll watch a few guides and I'll read up on a few things, and maybe things will get a lot more interesting the next time I log in. But right now, IRL is a little difficult. I'm having to work some very long hours, but I'm thankful, at least, you know, at this point, to be working in the real world. So that's always a good thing, and I can't really complain about that. But yeah, I'm definitely, like, at a point now where I'm, you know, I have a choice of just sitting there for the next 6 to 9 months with a front row seat watching World of Warcraft die, or pouring a lot of my time into this game and kind of, waiting to see what Ashes of Creation does. I'm enjoying this. I'm having a lot of fun with this, and I definitely think I'm going to stick around and explore this a lot more. Does this mean that, oh man, channel is pivoting and changing direction? No. But occasionally, if I can find myself a pirate ship, maybe we'll do a little bit more with this. We'll have to wait and see what opens up. I think it's going to be cool. I think it's going to be a good time. And certainly, if you're tired of waiting for 3.14 or 3.15 or all of that, and maybe there's a patch that you have your eye on in the future where a really cool ship from let's say a manufacturer like Drake is going to come out, and we can use that to quote unquote explore space, with an exploration ship. Until that comes out, now maybe I've got a new distraction to keep me busy. Anyways, that's the show for today. I hope you guys enjoyed it, and thanks for watching.
Thank you for watching. So if you want to keep up with the latest and greatest in Star Citizen Squadron 42's development, please follow us on our social media channels. See you soon.